The twin moons of Zerathia floated over the crystal palace, painting the sky in soft shades of silver and blue. Inside the grand throne hall, light shimmered from walls made of living crystal, humming softly like a heartbeat. The alien queen sat on her throne, tall, elegant, and strong. Her name was Queen Lysera of Zerathia, ruler of 10 star systems and protector of countless worlds. Her people feared her power and adored her wisdom, but tonight her attention was not on her empire. It was on the man standing beside her. He was not tall like the Zerathian warriors, nor did his skin shimmer like starlight. His name was Ethan Cole, a human from the distant planet Earth. His hands were calloused from work, his face simple, his eyes warm. Compared to the glowing beings around him, he looked almost ordinary, fragile even. Yet when Lysera looked at him, she saw something no one else did. She saw courage. They had met years ago during the Terran Peace Summit. Lysera had gone there to negotiate trade routes and alliances, expecting nothing but politics and dull speeches. But among the many voices that day, one stood out. A calm human voice that spoke not for power but for peace. Ethan, a mere engineer, had spoken up when others stayed silent. He had questioned generals, challenged lords, and somehow his words carried weight. Lysera had been fascinated. Not by his strength, not by his rank, but by his heart. Now years later, that same human stood beside her as her husband. The galaxy had called their union madness. A queen and a human? Impossible, they had said. Her advisors warned her, her council doubted her, and other rulers mocked her. But she never cared. She had seen something greater in Ethan than anyone else could ever understand. He didn't wear a crown, nor did he command armies, but his presence calmed her storms. When Lysera faced the endless duties of ruling, Ethan stayed by her side. When war councils dragged on for days, he waited patiently, offering her quiet comfort when all others spoke only of strategies and weapons. He didn't try to change her. He just listened, and that meant more to her than any treasure in the galaxy. The palace servants often whispered about the strange bond between their queen and the human. Some said he had enchanted her with Earth's primitive magic. Others believed she kept him out of pity. Yet anyone who truly saw them together knew the truth. The way she smiled at him, the way he looked at her, it was love. Pure, impossible love between two souls from different worlds. One evening, as the sun of Zerathia sank below the horizon, Lysera and Ethan stood on the palace balcony. The sky was filled with glowing stars, and the air carried the soft hum of distant ships. Lysera leaned against the railing, her silver eyes reflecting the fading light. "Do you ever miss your home?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes. But home isn't always a place. Sometimes it's a person." Her heart fluttered at his words. Even after all this time, he still had that way of speaking. Simple, gentle, yet powerful. She turned to him. "And who is that person for you?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You." Lysera felt something warm spread through her chest. She had fought wars, led armies, and ruled empires, but only this human could make her feel something she never understood before: peace. As the stars glittered above them, she whispered, "You are strange, Ethan Cole." He chuckled. "I've been told that before," she smiled. "And yet, I'm glad you are mine." He took her hand gently, his thumb brushing over her silver skin. "Always," he said. For a moment, there was only silence. The world outside the palace faded away. No politics, no duty, no war. Just two beings who found love across galaxies. But beyond the peaceful night, danger was already rising. Deep in the outer rim, something ancient was stirring. Shadows moved through space, devouring stars, and soon their light would reach Zerathia. And when that time came, the universe would learn that humans were not as fragile as they seemed. Only a few weeks after the Festival of Twin Moons, dark news began to reach the palace. Whole outposts at the edge of Lysera's empire had gone silent. Merchant ships vanished without trace. Patrol fleets sent to investigate never returned. At first, the council thought it was rebellion or pirates. But soon, the truth revealed itself, and it was far worse than anything they had faced before. They came from beyond the nebular gates, an ancient race known in legend only as the Kareth Dominion. They were said to be made of living metal and void energy, conquerors who devoured entire planets for fuel. Their ships were blacker than space itself, moving like shadows across the stars. When their message arrived, it was short and terrifying. Kneel or burn. The words echoed through the council chamber. Even the bravest generals lowered their heads. The Kareth had destroyed dozens of civilizations in their past, leaving nothing behind but silence and ashes. Queen Lysera stood tall among the gathered lords. Her silver eyes burned with fury. "Zarathia does not kneel," she said firmly. "We will stand and fight." But her heart trembled in secret. She knew the cost of war. She had seen the fires of conquest before. And this time, the enemy was something even she didn't fully understand. Ethan stood beside her quietly as the room buzzed with panic. Alien commanders argued, ministers shouted, and fear spread like wildfire. He didn't speak until Lysera turned to him. "You've been silent, my love. What do you think?" Ethan's voice was calm but heavy. "If they've come this far, they won't stop. They want everything. Every star, every life." Lysera nodded slowly. "Then they will find that Zarathians do not surrender easily." For the next few days, the palace became a storm of preparation. Warships were armed, soldiers trained, and defense grids activated. The sound of marching echoed through the crystal halls. From her balcony, Lysera watched as thousands of ships lifted into the sky like glowing arrows ready for battle. Ethan watched too. But there was no pride in his eyes, only worry. That night, as the stars shone above the sleeping city, Ethan found Lysera alone in her chamber. She stood by the window wearing her royal armor, a mix of silver and living crystal. She looked both beautiful and burdened. He walked up to her quietly. "You haven't slept in days," he said gently. "I cannot," she replied. "Every moment I close my eyes, I see their ships coming closer. I hear the screams of worlds burning." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to face this alone." She turned to him, her expression softening. "You are only one man, Ethan. I have armies, fleets, and yet—" "It still feels like the universe is too heavy for my hands." He smiled faintly. "Then let me help you carry it." For a moment they stood in silence, the distant hum of the city surrounding them. Then Ethan looked up at the stars. His face changed, serious, focused, almost determined. "Lysera," he said slowly, "there's something I need to tell you." Her brow furrowed. "What is it?" He hesitated, his voice lowered. "If things get worse, if they reach this planet, I might have to do something you won't understand." Lysera blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" He looked at her with eyes that seemed older than his years. "Humans, that we've always had something inside us. Something we rarely talk about. Something we keep buried because we fear it ourselves." She frowned softly. "Ethan, you are not a warrior. What could you possibly—" Before she could finish, the palace alarm blared. A deafening siren filled the night. The ground trembled. The stars outside the window turned red. Lysera rushed to the balcony and froze. Far beyond the horizon, thousands of dark ships emerged from the void. The Kareth had arrived. The sky of Zarathia began to burn. Ethan stood beside her, his eyes fixed on the invading fleet. He clenched his fist slowly, and for the first time there was something powerful, something ancient in his gaze. Lysera looked at him, frightened but trusting. "Ethan, what are you going to do?" He turned to her and whispered, his voice calm but full of quiet fire. "It's time you saw what humanity truly is." The night sky above Zarathia burned with crimson light. The Kareth fleet hovered in the upper atmosphere, their ships like monstrous shadows covering the stars. Every moment the ground trembled from distant explosions. The air smelled of smoke and fear. Inside the palace, alarms wailed through every hall. Soldiers rushed through the corridors, shouting orders, readying defenses. The crystal walls flickered as power shields activated. Queen Lysera stood in the command chamber, surrounded by her generals. Her voice was firm, but her heart was shaking. "Protect the eastern cities. Move the wounded to the underground shelters," she ordered. "We cannot let them reach the core." "Yes, Your Majesty," the officers replied, though their voices trembled. In the middle of all the chaos, Ethan stood silently. His human eyes looked calm, but deep within them something was changing. He watched the holographic map as red dots, enemy ships, spread like a disease across the screen. Lysera turned to him. "Ethan, go to the safety chamber. I can't lose you." He looked at her softly but didn't move. "You won't lose me," he said quietly. "But you need to know something first." Lysera frowned. "What are you talking about?" "There's no time," he interrupted gently. There's always time for truth. The Queen blinked, startled by the tone in his voice. He had never spoken like this before. Ethan stepped closer. You once told me humans are fragile, that we have no gifts like other species. No energy powers, no telepathy, no super strength. You're right. We don't. Not on the surface. He placed his hand over his chest. But inside us, something else lives. Something ancient. Something waiting. Lysera's voice softy. Ned, Ethan, you're scaring me. He smiled sadly. Don't be scared. What I'm about to show you, it's still me. Before she could ask more, the palace shook violently. A Kreth warship fired a massive beam that tore through the sky. The shields barely held. The air inside the chamber vibrated with power. Ethan looked up at the ceiling. They're almost here. He turned back to her, his expression full of quiet strength. Long ago, before humans reached the stars, before we even understood who we were, we discovered something strange in our DNA. A hidden potential. Scientists called it Project HumanMight. It wasn't about machines or weapons. It was about unlocking the human soul itself. Lysera listened in shock. You mean, humans experimented on themselves? Ethan nodded. Yes, but not for power, not for war. We did it because we believed there was something inside us stronger than fear, stronger than death, something that wakes up only when everything we love is about to be taken away. He looked at her deeply. Lysera, you once asked me why humanity never joined the Galactic Union. The truth is, we weren't ready. We were afraid that if we ever unleashed what we're truly capable of, it could destroy everything. So we hid. We waited. A spark of light began to shimmer faintly around his body. Soft golden light like the glow of a small sun. Lysera stepped back, eyes wide. Ethan, what is happening to you? He took a deep breath. It's waking up. The light grew brighter, surrounding him in waves that made the entire chamber tremble. The air felt thick, alive. The soldiers nearby dropped their weapons, stunned. Lysera's heart pounded. Ethan, please stop. It's hurting you. But he only smiled gently. It doesn't hurt. It feels like coming home. His voice grew deeper, vibrating through the air. Every human carries the potential of creation and destruction. We are the ones who rise when all others fall. That is our true nature. The light suddenly expanded, flashing through the entire palace. For a moment, everything was silent. The tremors stopped. The enemy fire paused. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath. Ethan stood in the center of the glow, his eyes shining pure white. His voice echoed softly, almost like a prayer. This is human might. Lysera stared at him in awe and fear. The man she had married, the simple, gentle human, now radiated power greater than any being she had ever seen. Her lips trembled as she whispered, Ethan, what are you? He looked at her, his expression full of love and sorrow. I'm still just a man, he said quietly. But now, I have to be more. Outside, the sky rumbled again as the Kreth warships descended closer. Lysera took a step toward him, her silver eyes shining with tears. Ethan, whatever you're planning, please don't do this alone. He smiled, the light around him growing stronger. I never am, as long as you believe in me. And with that, he turned toward the open balcony, facing the approaching darkness. The war had just begun. The sky of Zerathia had never looked so dark. Once filled with dancing auroras and silver moons, now it burned with fire and smoke. The Kreth Dominion had begun their full assault. Their warships blotted out the stars, raining destruction upon the surface below. Entire cities turned to ash in seconds. Mountains trembled. Oceans boiled. Inside the palace, Queen Lysera stood in the command tower, watching her world fall apart. Every report coming from her soldiers was worse than the last. The eastern defense line has collapsed. The fleet is destroyed. Millions dead in the southern colonies. Lysera's heart broke with each word. She had led armies before, but never had she seen destruction like this. The Kreth were not fighting for conquest, they were fighting for extinction. Her generals begged her to flee. Your Majesty, the enemy is advancing toward the capital. You must evacuate. But Lysera shook her head. I will not abandon my people. If Zerathia falls, it will fall with its queen standing. She stood tall, her armor glowing faintly under the emergency lights. Yet inside she felt fear, real suffocating fear. Not for herself, but for him. Ethan. She turned and found him standing by the shattered balcony doors, staring at the burning sky. The golden light from his awakening still shimmered faintly around his body. His eyes reflected the flames of war, calm yet filled with something deeper. Sorrow. Lysera rushed to him. "Ethan, we have to leave. You can't stay here." He didn't move. "If we run, they'll follow. There's nowhere left to hide." Tears welled in her eyes. "Then we'll fight together. We can still—" He turned to her, placing a gentle hand on her face. "You've fought enough, Lysera. You've carried this galaxy on your shoulders for too long. Let me carry it for a while." She shook her head violently. "No, you're only human. You can't face them alone." He smiled faintly. "You still don't understand, do you? Being human doesn't mean being weak." A deafening roar cut through their words. The palace walls shook violently as a massive Kareth warship broke through the clouds above. It was enormous, its black surface pulsing with red energy. The creature machine opened its maw, preparing to fire directly at the capital. Lysera grabbed Ethan's arm, panic in her voice. "Please don't do this!" Ethan stepped forward, his body glowing brighter. The light surrounded him like armor made of living stars. "I have to," he whispered. The beam fired. A torrent of red energy, powerful enough to vaporize an entire continent, shot toward the palace. Lysera screamed. But before it hit, Ethan raised his hand. The light around him flared into a brilliant shield. The energy collided and stopped. The shockwave was so powerful it shattered windows across the city, but Ethan stood firm, his feet planted deep into the marble floor. The force pushed him back slowly, yet he refused to yield. Lysera fell to her knees, watching as his body began to crack with light. "Ethan, you'll die!" she cried out. He turned his head slightly, smiling through the glow. "Not today." With one final push, he redirected the energy beam upward. It shot back into the sky, slicing through the Kareth warship like a blade of pure light. The massive vessel exploded in silence, scattering fragments across the heavens. For a moment, everything was still. The soldiers in the city looked up in awe. The queen trembled, unable to believe what she had just seen. Then Ethan collapsed. Lysera ran to him, catching his body before it hit the ground. His armor of light flickered weakly. His breathing was shallow, his skin pale. Yet his eyes, those human eyes, still held that same calm fire. "I told you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Humans, we don't give up." Lysera's tears fell onto his face as she held him close. "You foolish man." "You saved us," he smiled faintly. "Not yet. They'll come again, stronger, but next time, I'll be ready." The palace shook once more as more enemy ships appeared in the distance. Lysera looked up, her heart torn between love and fear. She pressed her forehead to his and whispered, "Then I'll stand beside you." The light from his body slowly began to rise again, brighter this time, spreading through the air like dawn breaking through endless night. The fall of Zerathia had begun, but so had the rise of human might. The palace stood in ruins. The once beautiful towers of Zerathia now lay broken, surrounded by flames and falling crystal dust. Smoke filled the sky, and the screams of soldiers echoed through the capital. The Kareth were everywhere, dark, towering creatures of living metal, crushing everything in their path. Queen Lysera stood on the shattered balcony, her silver armor cracked, her hair tangled with ash. Yet her spirit burned stronger than ever. Below her, the city was dying, but she refused to surrender. Behind her, Ethan lay motionless on the marble floor. His body was weak after blocking the warship's attack. His breathing was slow, his skin pale, and the golden glow that once surrounded him had faded to a faint shimmer. Lysera knelt beside him, her hands shaking as she touched his face. "Ethan, please open your eyes," she whispered. "I need you. Your people need you." For a moment there was nothing. Then his fingers twitched. His lips moved, forming a soft whisper. "Lysera." She leaned closer, tears falling. "I'm here." He looked at her weakly. "It's not over. They're coming." Before she could answer, a sudden explosion tore through the palace gates. A massive Kareth warlord stepped inside, towering over them. Its voice was like thunder. "The Queen of Zerathia falls tonight." Lysera stood up, drawing her crystal spear. Her hands trembled, but she faced the monster without fear. "If I fall, it will be while standing." The creature laughed, a deep metallic sound. "You are nothing before the Dominion." But before it could strike, Ethan's voice echoed from behind her, calm and steady. "No. You're wrong." The Kareth turned, its red eyes narrowing. Ethan was rising slowly to his feet. Light began to glow again from his chest. Soft at first, then stronger, brighter, until it filled the entire hall with golden brilliance. Lizara stepped back, shielding her eyes. "Ethan, what are you doing?" He looked at her, his voice gentle. "You once told me love was the strongest power in the universe. You were right." The ground trembled as his heartbeat grew louder. Thump, 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 echoing through the palace like drums of creation. The golden light turned white, spreading through every crack and wall. The air vibrated with energy. The Kareth warlord roared and charged at him, swinging its blade. But before the weapon could touch him, Ethan raised his hand. The blade stopped in midair, frozen in time. Energy rippled outward, bending reality itself. His eyes glowed pure white. His voice was calm, yet filled with something vast and eternal. "I am human, and I will protect what I love." He clenched his fist, and the warlord shattered into dust. Lizara gasped. She could feel the power radiating from him, something beyond mortal understanding. His body floated slightly above the ground, wrapped in threads of light and energy. The palace guards fell to their knees, unable to stand in his presence. The air hummed with warmth and power. Ethan raised his arms, and the light spread across the battlefield outside. The wounded soldiers felt their pain fade, their weapons glowing in their hands. Hope filled the hearts of the hopeless. The Kareth armies paused, their metallic heads turning toward the golden light shining from the palace. Their sensors screamed with confusion. They couldn't understand what they were seeing. From the balcony, Ethan looked down upon the burning city. His voice carried through the wind. "Zyrathia will not fall." "Not today," the sky answered him. A pillar of golden energy shot upward, piercing the clouds. The darkness began to break apart, and for the first time in days, sunlight touched the ground again. Lizara stared at him with tears streaming down her face. She had seen countless battles, countless powers, but nothing like this. The man she had once called fragile now stood like a god. When the light finally dimmed, Ethan fell to his knees, breathing heavily. Lizara rushed to him, catching him in her arms. His armor of light flickered, and his voice came out in a whisper. "It's not over yet. But now they know what humanity can do." She pressed her forehead against his and whispered, "You are my strength, Ethan Cole." He smiled faintly. "And you are my reason." Outside, the Kareth ships retreated for the first time. The tide of the war had turned, not because of armies or weapons, but because one human refused to give up. And as the golden light faded into the morning sky, the galaxy began to whisper his name. Ethan Cole, the human of light, the protector of Zyrathia. The dawn after the great light was calm, but everyone knew it was only the silence before another storm. The Kareth had retreated but not defeated. From the distant void, their fleets were gathering again, darker and stronger than before. Inside the healing chamber of the royal fortress, Ethan lay unconscious. His body was covered in faint golden scars that still glowed softly, as if the light inside him refused to die. Lizara sat beside him, her hand holding his gently. For the first time in days, her armor was gone. She wore a simple white robe, her eyes tired yet filled with quiet warmth. She whispered softly, "You changed everything, Ethan. You made them believe again." The door opened slowly, and General Kyle entered. His silver armor was dented and burned, but his spirit was steady. "Your Majesty, the scouts have confirmed. The Kareth Armada is reforming beyond the third moon. Their leader himself is coming." Lizara's gaze hardened. "The High Warlord?" Kale nodded grimly. "Yes, the one who destroyed 5 civilizations. They call him the Eternal Blade." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Lizara rose, her expression calm but fierce. "Then we face him. We no longer fight only for Zyrathia. We fight for every free world that still dreams." She turned back to Ethan, brushing his hair gently from his forehead. "Rest, my human. You've given us hope. Now we'll make sure it survives." Outside, the royal city was being rebuilt in haste. Broken towers were being repaired with glowing crystal, and soldiers trained in the courtyards, their armor shining under the pale morning sun. But despite the movement and the sound, everyone felt it, the coming of something vast and final. By nightfall, the skies turned red again. The Kareth fleets appeared like storms, endless waves of black ships, their engines burning like blood. The stars themselves seemed to vanish behind their shadow. Lizara stood at the front deck of the command ship Aurora's Heart, her spear glowing faintly. Her golden cape fluttered in the wind. Around her, the fleet of Zerathia and its human allies prepared for the greatest fight in history. But before the battle could begin, a soft hum filled the air. The light spread across the deck, and then Ethan appeared. He was standing tall, dressed in sleek battle armor forged from both human steel and Zyrathian crystal. His eyes glowed faintly gold, but this time it was not blinding. It was calm, alive, and steady. Everyone turned in surprise. Lysera's lips parted in shock. "Ethan, you're awake?" He smiled gently. "I told you I'd keep my promise. I'm not done yet." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "You shouldn't even be walking." He looked into her eyes with quiet strength. "Maybe, but I wasn't born to watch others fight my battles. Not anymore." The sky above rumbled. The Kareth ships began firing their plasma beams. Explosions lit the space like falling suns. Lysera raised her spear high, shouting, "For Zerathia! For freedom!" The fleet surged forward. Thousands of ships clashed in the void, beams of light tearing through the darkness. The war cries of both species echoed through the stars. Ethan and Lysera fought side by side on the main deck, their movements in perfect harmony. Where Lysera's spear struck, lightning followed. Where Ethan raised his hands, golden shields bloomed to protect the soldiers. At one point, a massive Kareth warship descended, its cannons aimed directly at them. Lysera braced for impact, but Ethan stepped forward, spreading his arms. The golden light flared again, wrapping the ship in pure energy. He pushed outward, his face tense with pain. The warship cracked apart, bursting into shards of metal that scattered across space. Lysera caught him before he fell. "Ethan, stop, you'll kill yourself." He looked at her weakly but smiled. "If I die saving you, it's worth it." She shook her head, her voice breaking. "Don't say that. You are not just light to us, you are life." Her words reached something deep inside him. Ethan stood again, stronger, brighter. His aura surged, and the golden light spread through every ship in the fleet. The human and Zerathian pilots felt their fear vanish. Hope replaced it. The sky turned gold. The fleets pushed forward, united. For the first time in history, two species fought not as allies of convenience, but as one people. The Kareth forces faltered under the radiance. Their black ships cracked and fell into the burning horizon. The Eternal Blade himself appeared in the distance, a massive silhouette glowing with red fire. Lysera and Ethan looked toward him together. Ethan whispered, "It ends tonight." And as the stars burned around them, they flew forward, two hearts, one light, toward the final battle that would decide the fate of all life. The void of space burned with fire and light. The Kareth Eternal Blade descended, larger than any creature Zyrathia had ever faced. His metal body shimmered with crimson energy, and his roar echoed across the galaxy, shaking ships and hearts alike. The fleet froze in fear, unsure how to face such a godlike adversary. But Ethan stood tall. His golden aura blazed brighter than ever. He looked at Lysera for a brief moment, her silver eyes filled with tears reflecting his light. He didn't hesitate. The universe had already seen his power, but now, he would show the Kareth what it meant to challenge humanity. He raised both hands, and a pillar of light shot from his body, stretching into the blackness above. Stars bent around him. The Eternal Blade roared and struck, his energy colliding with Ethan's light in a burst that shook galaxies. The two forces clashed like titans, light against darkness, hope against despair. Lysera gripped her spear tightly, feeling the tremor through the ship. "Ethan, you don't have to face him alone," she shouted, but he only smiled. "I never am," he said, his voice echoing across the void. "As long as you believe in me." With a sudden movement, Ethan focused all his energy. His golden light exploded outward, forming a shield over every planet the Kareth had conquered. Their ships faltered, their energy beams shattering harmlessly against the barrier. Then he surged forward, faster than the eye could follow, striking the Eternal Blade with a force that bent space itself. The creature roared, staggering under the power of one human's will. It had never met a being like Ethan, one who fought not for conquest but for love, for hope, for life itself. Each strike from Ethan carried the weight of countless human hearts, each a small universe of courage and defiance. Lysera watched, unable to blink. As the man she had married became more than human, he became a legend. She fell to her knees, tears streaming, whispering to the stars, "Please, bring him back." The battle raged, shaking even the farthest moons. Ethan's body glowed so brightly it seemed like the sun had descended into the battlefield. Then with a final decisive movement, he channeled all his energy into a single strike. The eternal blade let out a scream that echoed through space, then shattered into fragments of molten metal and fire. The remaining Kareth ships retreated in panic, their formation broken, their will destroyed. For a moment, silence fell. Only the hum of energy from Ethan's aura remained. The galaxy held its breath. Then the light began to fade. Ethan fell to one knee, exhausted, golden energy flickering like dying embers. Asera ran to him, catching his trembling body in her arms. "You did it," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You saved everything." He smiled faintly, blood and sweat on his face. "No, we did it. Humanity. We never give up." Tears streamed down her silver face as she pressed her forehead to his. "I was afraid I would lose you. I thought maybe humans were too small, too weak." He shook his head, smiling softly. "We are small. We are fragile. But that is what makes us strong. Love, hope, courage. These are bigger than any weapon." The stars above returned to their normal glow, the fires of war fading. Planets once enslaved by the Kareth were free again. Aliens and humans alike emerged from hiding. Witten,